What's up, party people, and welcome back to another episode of NYC Foodways, your weekly food and culture discussion from the cultural capital of the world. My name is John, and this week's episode is dedicated to Master Chef Andy Ricker, who managed to do it right without being ethnocentric. Read anything bad lately? I have. One of the worst things I have ever read, in fact, Danzig Baldaev's book Drawings from the Gulag. This book radiates malevolence. The cover sports the satanic trifecta of prison camp wire, the Grim Reaper, and a skull-faced man. But this illustration is positively cheery when compared to the visual and verbal pits of hell that await us as we travel through the depths of depravity that was the Soviet Gulag system. This book is one of the most horrifying pieces of media I have come across, and I'm covering it this week because I am still partially under its thrall and hope to purge myself of it, to the degree that such a thing is possible, by speaking about it to others. Danzig Baldaev was born in 1925 in Russia's Far East, the son of so-called enemies of the people, and as a child was separated from his persecuted parents and placed in an orphanage for the children of political prisoners. Following service in the Red Army during World War II, he was assigned to duty as a prison guard, where he started drawing the tattoos of criminals. His art caught the attention of the Soviet authorities, who wisely saw the merits of someone working to study this arcane visual language, and who supported his work in the field, sending him to numerous prisons and labor camps across the USSR. What the authorities were not aware of is that he was making and keeping hidden another series of visual recordings, drawings from the Gulag, that he both witnessed firsthand and heard of from others. Following his death in 2005, these formerly unseen images were collected and edited by the UK publishing house Fuel. Fuel's editors packed a lot into this book, just as Baldaev packed a lot into each frame he illustrated. Apart from the dozens of drawings, each extensively annotated by Baldaev himself, there are additional footnotes, endnotes, appendices, and a bibliography. It should be observed here that Baldaev is an incredibly skilled artist. Yes, what he shows us is heinous, but how he presents it is fascinating. His stark illustrations of these scenes of hell are brought to life, perhaps to death, with the brushstrokes of a master draftsman. Strangely enough, Baldaev's depictions call to mind those of R. Crumb, and it is these depictions of hell, as I cannot think of another word to describe what we are about to examine than the biblical concept of hell, that fill this sickening tome. I wish this book didn't exist. Well, I wish this book didn't exist because I wish the things Baldaev wrote and illustrated didn't occur. But they did, and now I'm here to tell you that the horrors Baldaev describes would not be out of place in a work by Bosch or Bruegel or any other person of this world attempting to paint their imagined version of the worst kind of human suffering. But the difference between Bosch and Baldaev is that, in Boschian hells, the torturers and sadists are literal demons, i.e. not human. But in the Gulag this was not so, and the fact that these inhuman acts, were carried out, often with glee, by humans is damning. So damn this book. Damn its scenes of torture, rape, and murder. Damn the system set up to bury or ignore its legacy. Damn the millions of willing and active participants in its execution. And damn the dominant global culture's typical disinterest in anything too vast, too ugly, too brutal, or too specific. I hate this book, but in feeling hate, one cannot say they don't at least on some level care. So let's dive in. Gulag is the English translation of the Russian acronym that stands for Chief Administration of the Camps, the government agency that oversaw the hundreds of prison camps and labor colonies that served as one of the main levers of Soviet repression. The zones that ultimately gave rise to the Gulag were first established in 1918 in lockstep with the early terrors of Soviet Russia. This network of sites, famously dubbed the Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, operated as a clearinghouse for the millions who fell afoul of the communist government for crimes real or imagined over the course of nearly a century. A note on the accused. According to Baldaev, the secret informer network kept the entire population in deathly fear, akin to that of the Inquisition. Informants, out of a sense of profit, greed, envy, and other brute instincts, reported on their friends, relatives, immediate family, and acquaintances. Roundups of the denounced, the informed upon, The suspected of wrongdoing and many who were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time adds another layer of depravity to the mess we've gotten ourselves in here. Not that anyone deserves to be subjected to the sick treatment of the Gulag system, but the fact that so many were blindly selected for punishment makes it that much worse. And punishment is the operative word here. It begins shortly after arriving at the police station or interrogation headquarters. There, as Baldaev illustrates, heinous methods of torture were used to extract confessions from hapless citizens. The twisted logic of the day did not allow the system to simply ship their so-called enemies to the Gulag. No, it required admission of guilt. The fact that this admission, as it were, occurred after being subjected to, for example, being hung from the ceiling by one's wrists was beside the point. After the torturous interrogation, of which this is one of the less horrific examples, the accused were hauled off to one of the scattered nodes of the Gulag itself. Of course, many died en route, and the circles of hell became more pronounced upon arrival to the prison camp or labor site. Unbelievably, some shipments of convicts arrived to areas without buildings or shelter and were forced to sleep in open pits, often in the dead of winter, until they themselves were able to finish building their own prison. The torture and agony of the arrest, interrogation, and imprisonment section of drawings from the Gulag looks benign compared to the living hell that awaited convicts at the Gulag prison camps themselves. Where to begin? Would you like to hear about cannibalism? No? How about an overview of the prison hierarchy itself? At the top were the so-called thieves-in-law, who served as the true authority among the inmates. These men were the heads of criminal organizations and were expected to follow a strict code, the violation of which could result in death, and which included such rules as a ban against marriage and children, to only earn one's living through illegal means, to never collaborate with any government apparatus, and to live no more than 1 year at a time outside the prison zone. Below these authoritative thieves were several rungs of criminal types, the lowest of which, the outcasts, were subjected to treatment I have no interest in describing on this channel. The other main group were the so-called enemies of the people, ideological, political, or just randomly accused enemies of the Soviet machine. These folks were horribly mistreated by the camp's violent criminal types, who used them largely as a workforce to fulfill the absurd production quotas levied on the populace by the prison camp's administrators. How about some drawings? Here, recent arrivals to the Gulag are hosed with water and temperatures far below freezing. Here we have a touching scene of murderous gang warfare between a group of hardcore thieves-in-law and a splinter group of the same who chose to collaborate with the prison administrators. Here are some comforting images from a lengthy section of the book titled simply, Death. Bodies being thrown overboard, bodies being thrown into a mine shaft, bodies being dumped into an open pit, bodies being stacked like kindling, bodies being shoved into a hole in the surface of a frozen river. There was a lot of sexual violence in the Gulag, which is to be expected, and we're not going there today. It's the most twisted stuff in the foul tome, but it is not the most surreal. Perhaps surreal isn't the right word for this next concept. I'm not sure if there even is a right word. Maybe one of you can help me describe the energy behind this notion. According to Baldaev, holes were made in the skulls of dead prisoners with a special hammer before they were to be buried. This was undertaken not to ensure that the victims were dead, as they were obviously dead, but because the administration wanted them double dead. What does that mean? How could a human come up with such an idea? How could other humans fall in line to put it into place? Does the idea of such an act and the ideology behind it upset you as much as it upsets me? And can we finally call it a day here? Reading this book the first time around filled me with a mixture of horror, fascination, and revulsion. The second time, it took physical effort to turn each page. There will not be a third time. I'll see you next week.